fellow webheads, it is your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and today we are together to review another issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Hopefully you were able to check out last week's episode, which was looking at issue number 50. I had special guest Andy Smith on with me for that episode, and it was awesome. He did a great job. Hopefully he'll be back on the channel again to go over another really iconic issue like issue 50. If you haven't checked it out yet, go back to the playlist here on YouTube. It's one you definitely want to find out, want to review. Issue 50 in terms of The Amazing Spider-Man is a pretty good jumping on point if you're new to either the comic or the series. It kind of gives you a good wrap up of Spidey, all of his the subplots going on, supporting characters, things like that. And it did introduce a new villain in the Kingpin. So exciting stuff. And we're going to continue that story. So this episode or issue number 51 continues the story of Spider-Man's first encounter with the Kingpin. And so I'm very excited to bring this to you and take a look at it. So without further ado, let's head over to the comic and check it out. So here we have The Amazing Spider-Man 51 in the cover. It's a very good cover. I like what we've got going on here. It is a nice down shot. So the camera or view of the viewer is up above looking down into this ring of bad guys circling Spidey. So he's definitely in peril, which you want on your cover. You want the outcome to be in question. You've got some thugs with some guns. You've got the Kingpin. Things are not looking great for Spidey. And so that's the key, right? As readers, we're going to tune in and open this book up to see what happens. I like the yellow focus, the color here in the background. That yellow color brings everything, the focus to Spidey in the center, and then your eye moves around the ring. So that's a really nice element there with the darker background fading out behind. I will say that I thought on this cover some of the inking was a little loose, especially on the faces. So we're going to blow these up really quick here. And you see they're interesting. The faces of the thugs are all very interesting. But it felt like the inking, like I said, was a little loose, a little squiggly here and there. And there are some inking issues that I found in this issue that we'll review as we go through. But again, these just sort of seemed... Again, the best thing I could describe it was as it was loose. So I don't know where the reasoning was behind that. I know in terms of this issue, Mike Esposito is the inker again on this issue. John Romita is the penciler for this issue. So I don't know, but it's not clear if Esposito inked the cover or Romita inked the cover. My thought is, based on some of the things that I've noted, I would say Esposito inked the cover as well, but I could be wrong. But anyway, overall, powerful cover, good cover, works to get us to want to open this up and see if Spidey can get out of this jam. Of course, I'll cover all the things that we do in every episode here. First of all, again, thank you to all the viewers who have subscribed. We are pushing to 1,000 subscribers for the year 2026. So if you're watching this, think about subscribing. All you have to do is click that button. It is 100% free for you to do so, but really helps me and the channel out. And then as well, when we get to 1,000 subscribers, let me cut back to me real quick. I'll cover this at the end as well. But when we get to 1,000 subscribers, there will be a drawing for this piece of art, this original Spidey 11x17 hand-colored art by yours truly. Will be going to a subscriber for free when we reach 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to be part of that drawing and possibly win that piece of art, make sure you are a subscriber. So this is a scanned PDF copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 51 in 2004. Marvel Comics scanned all the original books up to that point. And so we will see this with all of the ads, all of the page turns, all of the original coloring, which I think is a lot of fun. Sometimes We noted that in the last issue with Andy, he had a reprint copy of issue 50. I think it was in a trade paperback of some of the classic John Romita stories. So, and I was looking at the original, and we commented a lot about how the coloring changes to a more quote unquote modern style or modern comic really sometimes don't work as well. And so we talked a lot about that. Here we're going to see the original colors. This book still, we're still in 1967 with the publishing of this book. And so we're still within the first couple years of Spider-Man. I like this splash page. This one is a nice mix. So I like a splash page that takes you into the story. But at first glance, you're like, this is the Kingpin. He's literally smashing a city. And you go, well, is this like a montage or a recap sort of image of, second cover, if you will. But when we go to the next page, you'll see this is the start of the story. As I mentioned here, like we have Stan Lee writing, John Romita drawing, and then Mickey DeMeo, which again is a pen name for Mike Esposito. He was the inker on this book. And I noted here the hand. So the Kingpin's hand is nice. It's he's doing a great job of drawing this character who's new. We've only seen him in the last issue, so he's doing a great job keeping scale, size, all of the things that make the Kingpin. The Kingpin is very good. On the hand here, this scratch. So when you see things like the shading, I'm going to go zoom in just a little. So let's say like on the Kingpin's face, he has this dark shade on top of his nose, on his chin. So you're kind of questioning, I guess, the lighting is, I'm not sure where the lighting's from behind him, right? So the front of his forehead's a little dark, but this top area of his jacket is all lit. And then here, this shadow is all dark. So when we see shadows, we see some solid blacks. There's a little bit of feathering, but it's pretty thick lines. Then when you get to the hand, there's these very thin lines. Now, these are shadows definitely to delineate the knuckles. And maybe because he's supposed to be fat, that's why they didn't draw a sharp line to define the knuckles. But I don't know if this is supposed to be hair or if this is supposed to be shading or somewhere in between. And that's one of the things that kind of gets lost to me. And there's times where, like I said, the inking is a little loose, and times when it's much tighter. I'm assuming this would make sense. These lines on the fingers here, that would make sense that that's hair on his fingers. So I would assume that then this is hair on the back of the hand onto the arm. But it's very, very similar in its line weight to some of the shading that's supposed to be happening around the knuckles. So anyway, just one of those things about consistency and the inking that I find a few times throughout this book that I'm not super happy with. I think I do prefer when John Romita inks himself, but I understand the process of making a comic, and sometimes it's just faster to have it be a team effort. So as I mentioned, we're going to skip the page, and boom. So you see the Kingpin was smashing a small model of New York City. So this is directly into the story. Everybody believes Spider-Man has quit. Peter had turned in his costume and had given up, and then J. Jonah Jameson announced that Spidey was gone, only for Peter, of course, to change his mind, remember his responsibilities. With great power comes great responsibility, and get the costume back. So he is now back. And the Kingpin is trying to organize all of the criminals in New York under himself. And he realizes that J. Jonah Jameson here is a threat with his editorials. Again, great stuff here. Like, every face is different. They have a lot of similarities in some aspects to make them look like, I guess, they're thugs, they're rough guys, they work for the Kingpin, they're criminals. But everybody has a pretty unique kind of look, which isn't easy when you're doing crowd scenes. So kudos there. I like this top image very much. This one is great when the look on the Kingpin's face, just this face, the way the jowls go, the scowling and the big heavy eyebrows. It just really suits an angry face really, really well. It just lends itself. So that's a terrific piece there. I think that's really, really good. Moving the camera through in and out. So medium shots to a little bit closer to far shots to close again, keeping us interested visually while just in talking heads. This really shook me as well. Again, talking about just the inking. So I've done a couple breakdowns explaining the difference between what a penciler does, what an inker does, colorist, etc. If you go back a couple of episodes, I did have a link again to our friend Andy Smith. His YouTube channel, he has a breakdown to explain the differences between layouts, roughs, pencils, finish pencils, inks, finishers, etc. But in this one, this line is so thick and so heavy for such a small panel. And I get it, the Kingpin, it's a close-up. But even like what's supposed to be sort of the rendering or hatching there, the little bit of lines here on the white part are so thick and heavy that it comes across very weird. The first thought I had was it reminded me of a coloring book. That's what the lines reminded me of. So I thought these ink lines were way too thick. Now you could have some thick around the bottom of the chin, the lip, the nose, but then some of these tighter lines are around the top of the ear, the top of the fingers, things where the light is supposed to be hitting from the top down. There's also no real shading here other than the lines. So to me, not the best inking job. It's very, very heavy. And it took me out. As I was reading, I just went, whoa, is that... I kind of asked myself, like, is that a printing mistake? Did they double print the black lines? They're that thick. But I think that's just the way it was inked. I said the crooks look good. Yep. And then on this page, Spidey... so the crooks go out under the Kingpin's orders to pick up some protection money. And Spidey pops in and takes them on. I thought some of these inks were a little thick as well. Or I said dark inks. So especially like these last couple panels. So this one over with Spidey over the cities, not too bad. Always good perspective there, and a nice down shot of Spidey swinging around. But then like in here, now again, this could be the printing on newsprint. We're losing a lot of detail because the ink lines are very, very heavy. And then same thing down here with these two panels. I thought like this figure in the hat and the purplish suit looks really good. This ink work is very good. Now we come over here and it's just super thick. Like look how thick the lines are on the Spidey webbing on the costume. They're as thick as the contour lines outlining the shape of the form. It's just too heavy for my opinion, and I don't know how it happened, why it happened, if it's a choice or just a printing situation. I don't know for sure, but just really, really heavy, and I feel like you lose some of the images there, since when the inks are too thick and heavy, it starts to blend together too much. Now we get to this page, and it's great. Here we go. Now we have a much better mix of heavy and thin lines. This was much better. So, you have this thicker line as this hand is back towards the camera. This is a great angle as well, as this guy's lining up to give Spidey a karate chop in the back, which I think is kind of funny. But this is very nice. You get this angle on the shoulder here, this guy in the corner of the first panel. So again, all of a sudden we have a much nicer ink job here. One thing to note again for newer artists, don't do this. So you've got the bottom of your panel here. You've clipped off this guy's foot at the ankle, and then Spidey is essentially standing on the panel with both of his feet in the bottom of the panel. That completely flattens it out. You're no longer looking through a window at an image. You are looking at something that is the same plane as the paper. You don't want to do that. So over on this one is much better. There's some overlap here. The elbow is fine. This part is really good. That there's no real tangents to speak of that I noted. But this right here, you never want to clip your figures at the joints. So if something's going off the panel, you don't want to do it at the elbow, the wrist, ankle, knee, etc. And you never want your character's feet or hands to be resting exactly on the panel border. This one's close, but we know like his toe would be pointed out here a little bit. So that's a little bit better. This one also a little bit close, not so bad. But this one, because you put the camera down low, it does kind of draw us down from this hand down to Spidey and then boom, right to the bottom of the panel. Now, I'm sure some of that is to bring your eye down the page to help move your eye through the page. However, there's other ways to do it without clipping or placing your figure right on that border. But overall, really, really nice stuff. Good choreography here of Spidey fighting off these guys, getting grabbed and held, taking the hit, swinging back and punching out guys. And then we get to, let's see here. Yeah. Okay. I liked actually this little bit here. So the big guy who was in charge of the crew, like he takes off, realizes Spidey's going to whoop his gang. So he takes off. His foot is off the ground and you see the shadow below. So it just kind of helps emphasize that running, that he's running so fast. We've caught him in a moment where he's not even touching the ground to get to this car and get away. So I like that little bit. I think that's a nice little touch there. Again, this is more of that real heavy-handed inking. I don't like it. The outline here is so thick that, again, like this guy's face just becomes a mush. The detail, like there are supposed to be, you can see they tried to ink strands of hair, but it's so thick it all just bleeds together. Not a great panel in terms of inking. Not bad as far as Spidey beating up 3 guys at once. That part's okay, but the inking job of it is a bit much. I like this as he's getting grabbed and the car's going away. You got the crowd to watch. I think this is a pretty good panel here. I like that. I like using the horizontal and the motion to show the escaping, and then more of just Spidey beating guys up. So he takes off, lets the police handle things. This is a very nice crouching pose. You got the Dutch angle. That is, again, where you take your vertical, like a building that would be 100% straight up and down and perpendicular to the ground. And you take and you tilt both of those, and it creates a more interesting angle, like you've turned your head to look up. It's a very natural pose of him just sort of crouch down, and you can sort of see the feet, the way that the boots that he has aren't boots. There's no sole to them so that he can stick to the wall, which means he's basically walking around almost in like socks. So you would see the way that the bones of the foot might curl around an edge or move. It's going to have bumps as opposed to, again, a hard shoe. So small detail, but I really like what John did there. And then we have the Kingpin again, and now he's going to figure out what he's going to do with Frederick Foswell. So just to remember, Frederick Foswell, going all the way back to like, I think it was issue 10, was a masked criminal called the Big Man. And at the time, he was trying to do the same thing that the Kingpin here is doing, which was unite all the organized crime bosses under himself. And of course, he got caught and he went to jail. And then when he got out of jail, he was supposed to be reformed and was helped out Spidey, helped out J. Jonah Jameson as a reporter, and really kind of seemed like he had turned himself around. And now immediately, when it seems like Spidey's out of the picture and the Kingpin's making a play, he turns, he turns up immediately and is like, nope, I'm getting in on this. So real quick turn, and now he's trying to see either Foswell's trying to position himself to where maybe he can make a move and supplant the Kingpin, and then of course the Kingpin is trying to use him as much as he can as well. So a couple of schemers scheming against each other, but nice little segments here. I like the buttons, the little bit of setup of the background there, and the curtains are very nice. I think this is terrific. So these are the guys that Spidey had beaten up that escaped, and now they've come to yell at the Kingpin to tell him, like, hey man, you said Spidey was gone and he whooped up on us. You're full of it. This pose of the Kingpin is amazing. Just the way he's hunched forward, the way that this giant head attaches to the torso, the size of the hands, and just the positioning of the body combined with the look on the face, the expression, it's so good. I love this figure. It says everything you need to know about the Kingpin right there. That is just a terrific piece. And then let's see here. Yep. And then we have, so the Kingpin decides he's going to take this big dude, the karate chop guy, and he's going to teach him a lesson. He doesn't need any of his gimmicks. He doesn't need any help. The Kingpin is going to beat him up on his own, which is right. That's the thing about the Kingpin. It makes everybody thinks he's big and fat, but he's actually super solid muscle, more of like a sumo wrestler style body type. And he's not afraid to use his physicality to control his criminal organization. And that's what makes the Kingpin such a dangerous adversary for Spidey, or later for Daredevil. So he takes on this guy. Again, nice movement, nice choreography, catching the punch, flipping around. Good stuff. Just nice to see a different, shape, different kind of character in the Kingpin. I think it's very cool. Usual stuff here. Again, a lot of talking heads. We've got to change scenes. Kingpin asserts his dominance again. Now we go to Jameson and the Bugle, and they've got to figure out what's going on. And he needs a reporter and a photographer. So Peter comes back. Things are back the way they were. Ned Leeds is working the story. And we cut from Peter and the Bugle as he passes by the diner, and there's his friends. So there's Harry, Gwen, and MJ. And I said, this is a great MJ. I thought she looks terrific in this panel down here at the bottom. The dimples in her smile, the little cleft to the chin, great eyes. I mean, John's Aunt Mary Jane is terrific. Gwen, on the other hand, to me, my note is that she looks a little off model. There's something about the mouth that I thought was strange. I don't know what it is. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there's just something about Gwen where if you colored this hair different, you might not realize that it's supposed to be Gwen Stacy, right? So if she had, more brownish hair, it doesn't look enough like her to make me clearly say that's Gwen Stacy. Now, you can assume that it is from the context of who she's with, but there's just something about it will just, again, looked a little off model to me. Let's see here. And then we have cool stuff here. So Spidey is following all the big crime guys to this club so they can figure out what's going on. And this is a nice down shot again. Whenever you're doing a down shot or an up shot, you have to establish what is the sky, what is the ground. So great stuff here. A little bit of the roof. You got a couple of the guys outside waiting. They're keeping watch, a car. So we can tell that Spidey is on the building looking down towards the ground. If this had been flipped and you put clouds and birds here, then Spidey is flipped around and he's looking up. So very important to have those extra details. he's behind this window and he decides to bust in and stop these guys from robbing this club. So one of the things I noted in my notes, whenever you have a character like this that is breaking through a window, a door, a wall, anything that's going to shatter or break into pieces, one of the things you need to do is overlap some of these pieces in front of your character. So you notice there is no glass in front of Spidey. So he's hit the window and he's already through it, and the glass is breaking around him. And what that does, without that overlapping, it flattens everything. Spidey is now on the same plane of distance as the pieces of broken glass. You put the broken glass slightly in front of him, and now you've created depth. And that's what's missing here. So, yes, it's a little bit of a hassle to overlap some of those things and show and make sure your colorist and inker understand what that is, that it's debris in front of your character. But if I'm going to break through something, there's going to be bits and pieces that are going to shoot in front of me from my force of breaking through it. And those are going to be between whoever sees, whoever's looking at me, between me and them. There's going to be bits and pieces. So that's something that you just need to remember and keep in mind when you're doing this sort of scene. Yes. And then good stuff here. Spidey is taking on the guys, and he is using all of his agility to whoop up on a bunch of guys all at once. So he's diving in and tackling a guy to the ground while he's kicking another guy, flipping up, sticking to the wall, punching guys. Great. And then somebody throws a grenade to get them out. So Spidey, of course, he's okay. But he has to help save everybody. There's a beam that's going to fall, so he's got to hold the beam while the criminals escape. But he uses his spider tracer. Nice stuff here. I like the close up of Spidey. Not quite a close up, but closer. It feels like he is rising from the ground, that his weight is on that knee and elbow, so that he can get his spider tracer out of his belt. Good, very classic superhero lifting pose, holding things up while everybody escapes, and then a nice dive out the window. So good stuff, good choreography, good composition of the page, nice elements. I like the smoke sort of trailing in and out. That's another nice element of depth, is from the explosion. You have smoke that's sometimes in front, sometimes behind. That's a nice tag there too. So there we go. Spidey takes off, and now they've got to figure out what's going on. I thought this was funny as J. Jonah Jameson. So they break in to kidnap J. Jonah Jameson to take him to the Kingpin, and Kingpin's going to try to get him to stop reporting on him because he doesn't want to be. He wants to keep everything, hush hush. But Spidey or Jonah's got his cigar, and when these guys come in, even though his teeth are clenched, he has somehow managed to spit out or drop his cigar, which I thought was just a funny little storytelling bit. It's not a big deal, but it does explain why he does not have his cigar in his mouth the whole time, because when the guys burst in his door, out of surprise, he dropped it. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Nice coloring here as they take him in the car. The guys in the foreground are this nice neutral gray color, and your color behind. So that way we're not focusing on the foreground. We're focusing on this yellow behind them, which is the key, right? That's Jonah in the back seat. So nice use of color and neutral to focus your eye where you want to focus the eye. So that is very good stuff. Okay here. Again, nothing super crazy. Spidey finds them by following the Spidey tracer. And if I'm not mistaken, this may be one of the first times I was keeping track of it earlier. So if you go back to earlier episodes, you will see when Spider-Man invents his spider tracer. So it's a little miniaturized radio that sends out a little signal that he can track. And at the beginning, he tracks it with a device that he literally wears it around his neck. And it's a mechanical device that, like a Geiger counter, the closer he gets, the more noise it makes, and he can follow his spider tracer. Now he's using his spider sense. And this may be the first time that he uses his spider sense instead of the technology to pick up the trail. So that is a big change. If if I'm right, and this is the first time, that's a big change in Spidey, and goes on with him throughout his career. Nice shot there of him looking in the window. Good pose, good angle. All the guys rush out to get him, and of course he's up on the wall. And then I thought this was very nice. What I say? Love panel 3. Yeah. So Spidey webs up some of the thugs and takes them. And here, the Kingpin again. He's going to assert his dominance the way he did earlier, and try to handle this himself. If he can, that would really obviously raise, the respect value or the fear value of him with his men. So nice. Spidey lands, flips out of the way, and panel 3 is great. The swing of the cane. So this massive figure is swinging with all that weight. So his waist, his hips are twisted, and the legs are twisting in the opposite way of the hand, but you fit that big head in there. Great swing. And this landing of Spider-Man, all crouched down on his hands with his fingers like this, that is a Romita pose. When I see that, I see not only John Romita repeating that kind of pose, I can picture the exact book that I know that his son, John Romita Jr., used that same pose of Spidey landing upside down on his hands, crouched up, because he's going to either push off and leap away or kick. That is for me, just a Romita pose. Whether that's senior or junior, it's part of their visual language, and something you recognize. Right. So, yep, he kicks to get the cane away. So he kicks Kingpin, gets cane away, and smashes it. Now, I did have an issue here with the angles. And again, we've talked about it in the previous episode. Andy did a great job pointing out where there was a particular image, if you just flip that panel, things are now moving in the right direction, right to left, left to right, the way they were supposed to be. And here we have a little bit of break of that. So Spidey kicks away. The Kingpin is on his right hand side. Spidey's right hand side. He smashes the cane. The Kingpin should be over here somewhere, because he's on his right. He's on his right. When the Kingpin retaliates with a big punch, it's with his left, meaning that the Kingpin, if this panel was extended, this third panel was extended, the Kingpin would be over here on this side. So in between, from this panel to this motion, so web, grab, smash, the Kingpin has managed to switch sides, even though Spidey's smashing the cane on the wall behind both of them, and spin around and punch Spidey in the gut with his left hand. This panel could be flipped, 100% flipped, and it wouldn't change the story, but it would keep things on the correct side it's supposed to be. So again, little things like that make a difference, but it's something to make sure you're thinking about when you're creating your own comics. One last thing, I've pointed this out on a couple of issues inked by Mike Esposito. Sometimes the pattern on the Spider-Man face is wrong. And this is an example here. So you've got, everything is right. The number of radiating lines is right, but it's the circle web pattern, the scallop web pattern, if you will, usually would go 1, 2, and then only see the third on the top. And here we have 3 and 4. So there's too many webs in the face. And that's just a consistency issue that I've seen, again, in the Mike Esposito ink. So I'm assuming that's him, that either on this, maybe John doesn't when he pencils. Maybe he's penciling very loose, and so he's doing the shape of the figure, and maybe he's not penciling out all the lines of the Spider-Man costume. And so possibly as Mike goes in and inks, he's just filling that part in himself and not sticking as consistent as he should. Yep, I say here again, this is nice choreography. So Spidey gets punched, leans against the wall, but then when he flips up again, the Kingpin is on the wrong side. So the Kingpin is rushing towards Spidey's right. Spidey flips up. I guess this little motion is supposed to show that the Kingpin went past him and turned around. But again, you go, why? He could just be here, got here, reached and missed, and Spidey flips up above him. None of that changes, and everything's fine. And then all you have to do is, and I think this would work better if the Kingpin here is on this side of the panel, because he's basically now flipped again. Oh, no, I guess he's swinging around. But there's just a couple of back and forths here that don't work for me. I would flip panels 2 and 3 horizontally, and then it still works as an idea of him grabbing Spidey's leg, pulling him off, and swinging him like a baseball bat into the concrete wall. Now, Spidey gets a face full of gas. So the Kingpin has more gadgets and tricks than just his cane. He also has this gas spray from his tie pin. And Spidey couldn't catch his breath, so he got a big blast of gas. And again, very nice poses here. Nice, all the weight on that arm and the knee, you really feel it. Good mix of the smoke or gas, kind of some in front, some behind. Very nice. And then we've got they're circling around him, and now we have this great image here. This is a terrific last panel, probably the best panel of the whole comic, so great place to end. This is what I called a worm's eye view. Very nice stuff. So your camera is very low. Your horizon line is going to be very, very low down here. So everything gets focused into Spidey and that face that is right there, right at your horizon, right at your eye line. So really nice stuff there. The fist is huge. Catches your eye. Everything it leads you to the leg, leads you down here, like I said, to the horizon line. And we see the Spidey figure. Great weight, good angle. Perfect way to end the issue. Like I said, probably the best illustration of the entire issue. Terrific stuff there. Very, very nice. And we end on a cliffhanger. So Spidey's been gassed. He is either on the verge of passing out or going, he's weakened. So we have what's going to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut back to the desk here and wrap this up and talk about what's going to be going on next week. All right, so here we are back at the desk, and that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 51. Pretty good continuation of the story of the Kingpin and this introduction to him and how he's trying to bring all of New York's crime organizations under his boot. We got some good stuff in there, some very good illustrations, some inking that maybe didn't hit the mark at times, a couple of storytelling elements where I felt like figures were in the wrong space. Things should have been flipped around just from a continuity perspective, that if somebody's coming from the right, they should stay on the right. But not stuff that super takes away from the story unless we're looking for it, which is what we're doing here. We're trying to dissect the story. So in terms of a ranking out of 10, I would give this issue a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. There's a few issues. They don't take away from the overall story. I liked the cliffhanger ending. I love that last panel of the last page is terrific. The design of the Kingpin and the way that he's illustrated is really, really good. I'm very excited to continue this with the next issue and see what's going to be happening. I believe the next issue is the culmination of this storyline. So we've got a 3-issue little story arc here, which is terrific. So again, I want to thank everybody, and I want to remind you that we are pushing for 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. I know that sounds like a long way away, but we're already a couple of months into the year, and we need you. We need everybody's help to get to 1,000. And when we do, a random person, a random subscriber will be drawn to be the winner of this free Spider-Man illustration by yours truly. So when we reach 1,000, we will do a drawing. The winner will get this for free. And but again, you must be a subscriber in order to win. Also, I will be looking at doing a drawing stream coming up here. In case I don't want to give the specific date in case people are watching this on replay later, but we will be doing a drawing stream where I will be taking suggestions from the chat, and the first 5 people who give suggestions that I take, those people will get that illustration for free as well. So again, you have to be a subscriber, and you need to be live on the chat during the drawing. So that's what we're looking for to get us to 1,000, and with your help, I know we can do it. So thank you so much for taking your time. Again, don't forget, click those buttons, the thumbs up, the subscribe, the notify me, so that way you know when we do fun stuff like the live drawing that we're going to be doing. And I hope to see you next week for even more Spider-Man. Thanks.